I'd say the hardest part for me at that point was I was often hanging out with people a little bit older than me. And my kind of coping strategy was I'll just be cool with everything and I won't ask a lot of questions. And I think that's normal of early 20s. The problem was I didn't know I could advocate for my kind of relationship needs because everyone I was dating felt like they had more experience with this non-monogamy than me. And so I was like, oh, I just gotta be cool here and be okay with everything. And that's how I'll show that I'm really good at this. And looking back, I'm like, ugh, what a waste. There was so much space for those relationships to be so much more secure if I had just voiced my needs.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 407. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a lovely conversation with Ayala. She's been exploring non-monogamous relationships since her early 20s and now identifies as ambiamorous, someone who is equally comfortable and content in both monogamous and non-monogamous relationships.
Yeah, one of the things that I actually think is really great about Ayala's journey is that she actually started exploring relationships through a non-monogamous lens from the beginning, and then almost a decade later intentionally decided to give monogamy a try. So it's sort of a unique flip-flop from how most people we talk to have done it. I also love when we get to ask therapists about their own relationships, and Ayala is a relationship and sex therapist and is the co-creator of the Non-Monogamy card game, a game that invites exploration and deep connections with your partner or partners as you navigate crucial conversations around non-monogamy with creativity, integrity, and fun. Ayala's going to talk more about the card game later in the interview, and you can find links to all of Ayala's work and the Non-Monogamy card game in the podcast show notes down in your podcast player below or over on our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the podcast tab.
A huge thank you to Ayala for coming on and sharing your story. We can't wait to get this one out there. For anyone who's a premium subscriber, we're going to jump right into the interview with Ayala now. And for anyone else, we're going to go through a few announcements. First up, if you're not familiar with a premium subscription, it's a way to skip these announcements up front, but don't worry, you still get important dates of upcoming events in the outro. To sign up for the premium subscription, go over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, scroll down on the homepage, and you can sign up right there for $4 a month.
And then you can scroll all the way back up to the top and
click on the community tab.
The community tab, where you can learn all about the community that Emma and I have been leading for over 6 years,
yes,
about 6 years. We lead a community full of over 300 people who socialize and support one another every day. We use an app called Mighty Networks to host our community. We also have monthly community calls, in-person retreats, and we started doing free monthly virtual workshops earlier this year, so you can check out those over under the community tab. We've got a list of all of our workshops, but we've got an awesome one coming up on September 10th.
Yes, we do. It is called Playful Connections, Building Stronger Relationships Through the Joy of Play, and that'll be with Gary Ware. You can come join us. We'd love to have you on September 10th.
Yeah, we actually did one of these workshops way back during the pandemic when everybody was doing everything online.
Yes.
We had Gary come and join our community for an hour of playful games over Zoom, and it kicked ass. So we're super excited to bring him back and do it again.
And we also wanted to share that our next in-person community retreat is coming up October 3rd to the 5th. That's really soon. So you can sign up.
So you need to get your tickets really soon.
Yeah, come join us. Come join us. It is going to be in the East Bay, in the San Francisco area, California. October 3rd to the 5th. Come hang out with us for a few days. It'll be a great group. We're doing a pool party. It'll be a lot of fun.
We're going to have a great time. So you can find out more, again, over under the community tab of our website. If you scroll down, there's actually a link to a program guide, which tells you everything you need to know for the retreat. And then you can sign up and join the community. So we'll see you there.
And we also wanted to remind you about our favorite way to get tested for STIs. It is stdcheck.com. This is a service that Finn and I use. We've used it for years. It is discreet and simple to use. And best of all, you get to know your sexual health status. And by using the links on the resources page of our website, you save $10, making a 10-panel test only $129, and you support the show. So thank you in advance for using those links, and thank you to everyone who's used those links in the past as well.
Yes, thank you from my side. And the last thing we want to tell you all is that we would love to have you come on the podcast to share your story. You don't have to be a therapist or the creator of a game. You just have to be you. We love telling everybody's story. So please send us an email and we will make it happen. You can find that information over under the Contact Us tab of our website. And now let's jump into this fantastic chat with Ayala. We'll see you in there.
Welcome to the podcast, Ayala. We're excited to chat today. Thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'd love for you to start by just introducing yourself.
I'm Ayala. I am a relationship and sex therapist based in Northern California. I have a private practice, and I also co-created a game called the Non-Monogamy card game with a good friend and business partner. And yeah, I guess we'll get into all of that more.
We will for
Yes.
sure.
Yes, we will.
And your good friend and business partner, Kristen, is also going to be on the podcast. So episode coming soon. But today we get to talk to you and we get to learn all about you and your relationships. And maybe, we're assuming that non-monogamy has been part of your journey because you've created this game and because we know enough behind the scenes information. But we'd love to go back in time and figure out maybe where non-monogamy came into your life for the first time.
Yeah. I feel like my story is a little bit backwards from many other people's journey.
Perfect.
Growing up Bay Area adjacent and coming into my dating self, young adult self around the Bay Area, I really started dating non-monogamously. And like most early 20s dating, there was a lot of messiness and mistakes. I don't know how much of those were non-monogamy specific as much as early dating, figuring it out.
Well, I'm curious, growing up, in the Bay Area, and like you said, you're sort of starting off dating non-monogamous. We grew up in the Midwest, did not have any models of this for us, but I'm curious, did it still feel like radical to you, or were most of the models that you were seeing non-monogamous? Like, did it feel like you were going against the grain at the start?
Somewhat. I'm going to space out on what that book is. What's one of the earlier books, came out of an awesome San Francisco author on non-monogamy?
The Ethical Slut.
Ethical Slut. So I came across the Ethical Slut in high school. Thank you. And I remember I felt pretty edgy. It wasn't like really radical, but I felt kind of cool and edgy reading it and then like handing it around to all my friends. I was definitely like in high school, the edgier one that was like, here, take a vibrator as a Christmas gift and read this book. And not that I was practicing much of anything at that time, but just in my kind of like what I was bringing in. And so by the time I went away to college in Santa Cruz, I already kind of had a sense that this was how I wanted to be exploring, or it was something I was open to. I wasn't even set on it, but it was just a lot of curiosity. And then all the people I was attracting in my life, it was already pretty normalized. They already were non-monogamous. And so it was radical to my parents. At the time, there was a dismissiveness of my partners. Maybe dismissiveness isn't the right word. I remember my dad came out to visit me once and he's like, oh yeah, I met all Isla's boyfriends. So there was like humor around it, but also a like, oh, we don't know about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in my friend group at that time, it was pretty normalized. And I'd say the hardest part for me at that point was I was often hanging out with people a little bit older than me. And my kind of coping strategy was, I'll just be cool with everything and I won't ask a lot of questions. And I think that's normal of early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And the problem was I didn't know I could advocate for my kind of relationship needs because everyone I was dating felt like they had more experience with this non-monogamy than me. And so I was like, "Oh, I just gotta, like, be cool here and be okay with everything, and that's how I'll, like, show that I'm really good at this." And looking back, I'm like, "Ugh, what a waste." Like, there was so much space for those relationships to be so much more secure if I had just voiced my needs. I remember at one point a partner sitting me down and being like, "Just tell me what you want." Like, he's like, "I want to meet you where you're at, but you need to vocalize what you want." And I was like, I don't know. I just froze. And at that point, that was a hard question for me because I was so in this like experimental exploration that to really take a ground and stand for what I needed to feel safe, secure, and empowered in my own relationships, like hadn't quite come online yet.
Yeah.
And it's through those bumblings that I figured out a lot of that out. But I would say that was probably the biggest learning of that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was through your like late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, I would say through kinda like mid-20s.
Yeah.
And then mid to late 20s, I ended things with a long-term partner, telling him I wanted to experiment with monogamy.
And you
And
had been non-monogamous with that partner.
yes. Yeah, we'd been together on and off for nearly 8 years. At whatever point we called it quits, and that was why a big part of why I ended it. I was like, I wanna try something different. I was like, I feel like I've been in this exploration broad, but I'm curious what happens if I have a closed container, if I get to go deep in different parts of myself.
Yeah.
And it was hard to end things with somebody who I'd been seeing so long, who there was still so much love there. That wasn't really the reason for the ending, but it felt important in my own journey.
I want to dig into that transition a little bit more because I have some questions about that. But just to kind of going back, I mean, I just want to touch on the fact that, like you said, right, you're like advocating for ourselves in any relationship, uh, especially if you've never really done it, can be really hard. And it sounds like these were sort of your first relationships.
Yeah.
Were not just non-monogamous, but with, like you said, people who are older than you. And I just like even today, like you look at people who we'll call them the elders, and you're like, well, they must know because they're older than me, and they must know what they're talking about, and they've got it figured out. So, like you said, go along to get along. I don't want to like rock the boat. So I can just imagine that is hard enough to figure out relationships at that age, but you start doing
Oh.
multiple at the same time with age differences and all of that is just I have to imagine that was tough.
Yeah, there was parts that were tough, but there was also parts that were really beautiful, and I wasn't ready to be in a committed relationship, that my relationship became my world at that point in my life.
Yeah.
So it suited me so beautifully in so many ways. And I also I didn't differentiate between the depth of connection around friendship versus lover versus partner. And so it allowed me to have a lot of really depthful relationships and to never settle for a relationship based out of a need of like loneliness or I need someone in my life to like fill this gap. I had this beautiful, rich community of friends, lovers, partners around me. So my cup was pretty full. So I never had that, like, I'd watch some of my more monogamous friends just settle for a relationship because they wanted a person in their life. They wanted to combat that loneliness or fill the gap of, like, I want to do this together. And I felt like I just had such a net of that
Mhm.
it was a really beautiful way to explore my early 20s and myself within all these different dynamics and learn about myself without having to adapt to any one thing. So I don't want to like just emphasize the heart.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. And I think too, right, in that, when you are able to surround, yeah, the flip side of that, I think, is when you're able to surround yourself in that community, you can say, well, maybe I didn't advocate for myself here, but you might also have a whole group of people saying, like you said, the partner sits you down, is like, tell me what you want, right? And other people saying like, hey, you need to, like, here's how you can speak up. Here's some resources, right? You're
Yeah.
not swimming in the relationship pool all by yourself, which I
Yeah.
think is sort of maybe the flip side sometimes in monogamous relationships, is where it's one-on-one and everybody's like, well, they need to be the one, and they, it's there's some really toxic mindsets that can come in there as well. So I just appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was through those bumbles early on that a lot of the inspiration for the questions in the non-monogamy card game we created came out of, and
Mhm.
that recognizing, like, there's no doing this right. And we have to kind of ask ourselves these questions and find our own answers to them before we can communicate to our partners and figure out if we want relationship agreements, what we want those to look like. And those things change over time. What my relationships needs were in my early 20s versus what they are now in my mid 30s are very different. They're different in different relationships. So it was kind of through that exploration that we're like, oh yeah, it's so important to ask ourselves these questions, ask our partners these questions that are the
Yeah.
kind of bigger, like, what do I want? What helps me feel secure? What helps me feel loved?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm curious, in that time, just thinking back, what are maybe one or two of the sort of big aha moments you had, or lessons that you took away from we'll call them the bumbles?
Yeah. I think the biggest one we already kind of touched on, which is just there's no one right way, but we need to be able to connect in to that kind of what we want and to advocate for that.
Yeah.
And whatever that answer is doesn't matters a lot less than the continual checking in with yourself of like, okay, does this work for me? What do I want here? What do I want now? And getting clear enough in myself that I can communicate that with other people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which it sounds like you did when you come to your partner and saying, hey, I wanna try this whole monogamy, this radical monogamy thing out here.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that too, but I have a follow-up question on the, like, as you're talking about, like, not, a little bit ago about the question of what do I want in a relationship, having a really hard one. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, how did you feel like you had a clarity around other parts of your life around what you wanted? Was it, or just in general, just in this transition phase of trying to figure things out?
Oh, yeah. I have been one of those people that always tends to have a lot of clarity about what I want. I'm like, oh, this is my direction. This is my goal. And I'm like, once I have that goal, I'm really good at figuring it out. So, like, that's one of my superpowers as a human. And so it was really weird that it was such a hard question here in relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, nah, therapist, I could tell you all about the details about why that is about myself, but I'll spare you that deep dive for this hour.
Yeah, you sounds like you've definitely, like, unpacked that. Of course you have, and figured it all out. And so you come to your partner and you're like, "Okay, I wanna try this monogamy thing."
Yes.
Well, and
Uh,
I'm curious about this, and this isn't necessarily a challenge, but right, you could have become monogamous yourself and stayed with this partner, and they could have continued to be non-monogamous. So I'm curious, what was going on for you that it was like, I'm just stepping back almost from like the whole experience of non-monogamy.
Yes, I could have been monogamous within this relationship, and I was never gonna ask this partner to join me in that because I super saw who he
Hmm.
was and knew that that was not it, and I was not gonna try to change this.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And I there was ways the way we were doing non-monogamy at that point, that the level of communication that he was having around with his other partners about who I was to him wasn't feeling good and safe to me, and it just wasn't making me feel kinda cherished in the ways I wanted to feel cherished, and
Hmm.
I didn't have the language at that point to express that, to lean in on that edge with him and work that out in a different way
Hmm.
that I would have needed to be okay in a mono-poly relationship.
For
mhm.
sure. Yeah. And like I said, that's not a challenge of like, well, what,
Yeah.
don't why would you jump off the boat? But I think, there is something different about being and I don't always love this language, but being somebody else's the one, even if it's
Mhm.
the one for a little while, there's a different level of energy and attention and focus. And if you've gone, 8 to 10 years of never experiencing that, I can see how it'd be like, well, what is this like? What's it like to do some of the stuff you see on the Hallmark Channel and all the rom-coms and all of these movies? Like, haven't really necessarily experienced that.
Yeah, and I think that was the part I wanted to know more than being monogamous, not having other partners myself. I knew I
Hmm.
could do that and still love everyone deeply. But I think there was something in myself I wanted to work through around feeling chosen and cherished. And that's not even quite the right languaging. But well, yeah, I wanted to feel like what happens if we both put all of our attention on this container that I just never experienced and really wanted to know more about.
Hmm.
And where I am now is less adamant one way or another. I came across a couple years ago this term ambiamorous and really liked it because it allows me to kind of keep in the moment, asking myself, what do I want here? What do I want from this connection? I've had some connections that I'm like, there's no way I want to do monogamy within this container. I was dating someone last year who lived 9 hours away, and wonderful person. And I loved our connection. And I was not in a place where I wanted to be in a committed monogamous relationship with someone 9 hours away. So even though both of us were at a place where we're like, we could do monogamy or we could do non-monogamy, because of the logistics of that, that's what made sense for us. And being in this kind of more ambiamorous place, I'm like, okay, then that doesn't have to be any barrier. We can still explore the depth of all this wants to be.
Yeah.
And so that's really kind of where I find myself now. I have found an interesting piece of my monogamy is very different than other people's monogamy just because I am so deeply seeped in non-monogamous values community, because that was so intrinsic to who I was when I found myself in relationships. It really informs how I do even monogamy in a different way than I think many others. And so I realize I have to communicate even more, define what I'm talking about even more when I am considering a monogamous container with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to understand a little bit more about what makes your monogamy look or feel a little bit different. But I'm also curious how the transition from non-monogamy into monogamy goes. Right? That's quite a bit of a shift to make.
I don't feel a stark, like, oh, I dealt with these bumbles or the shift was really hard in this way. Because I'm trying to remember, this was quite some
Mm.
time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't immediately jump into any relationships. I think part of what I learned in that time of non-monogamy was like so much to be okay in myself and not be someone that jumps right from relationship to relationship, to fill my cup in a lot of ways for connection. So I don't remember jumping into any kind of monogamous relationship right away. I don't remember it hitting all at once. I think it's more when I pull back and kind of look at the transition over the years. It was like, oh, I have to communicate things differently. I have to, there's just assumptions I make, like it's not a closed container until we have a conversation that it's a closed container. And I'm going to be dating people. And then I'm going to, at some point, ask the questions of like, what do you want from this relationship? What do you need to feel safe in this connection? This is how I orient around those things. And to me, those conversations have so become just part of how I do relationship, and recognizing that that's not so for people who are deep. I don't want to make assumptions about
Mm.
all people that are monogamous either, but many of the people I've come across, assumptions about monogamy are like, oh, we're dating, and so this automatically this way. And it's like, no, we still need to have these conversations. They're still helpful.
Mhm.
And just having to recognize, I think at first I made assumptions of a lot more spaciousness until things were communicated
Mhm.
in the early transition. And then later had to realize, like, no, if operating from this place, I have to communicate and find out where someone else is operating from early on.
Yeah. No, I love that because I think, you've kind of talked about how early in your relationship journey things were fluid, right? Your friends, your lovers, your partners, they were all, it wasn't like these very hard containers that they were
Yeah.
sitting in. And so, I think this is the thing about monogamy too, is I think all relationships when we start them is to talk about what does monogamy mean for you? What does non-monogamy mean for you?
Mm,
Because you say, well, we're monogamous, but it's totally all right if you want to cuddle with your friends, right?
mhm.
But there's a lot of monogamous people who'd be like, oh no, you're not cuddling with your friends. Cuddling is our thing, right? Especially if it's somebody of a different gender or something like
And
that,
that's
right?
a huge one that I had to recognize because I was so used to being I mean, in my 20s in particular, I was a body worker for 10 years. My world was a lot of dance. And so I was with very embodied people. So completely platonically, we were always holding and touching and massaging and dancing with one another. And when I switched to exploring monogamy more, I was like, absolutely not am I giving any of that up. Like, this is
Yeah.
just how I do friendship and connection with other humans. And learning, like, oh, for some people, that's a lot. And that's challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. So you kind of moved into monogamy, like trying out monogamy, but not
Yeah.
right away. Just like this shifting into the relationship, a different relationship container for
Mhm.
yourself. And how did you didn't jump in right away, but like how did those like first several years go? Like, did you have any of those experiences?
Yeah. I mean, all these things I'm mentioning came out of direct experiences.
Yeah.
I found I was hesitant to jump into anything really monogamous. And I think I don't think I would do the stark jump from like extreme non monogamy to extreme monogamy. I think I pretty quickly found myself in this more ambiamorous
Mhm.
place
Yeah.
and that left a lot because really quickly I learned like I need the spaciousness to connect in these ways.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So each of these things kinda came directly out of one moment or another with navigating with one partner or another, and that was the time I was learning to communicate a lot better about what I needed, a lot better about what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You that was learned through experience the whole time.
Yeah.
And the term the term ambiamorous, for anyone who doesn't know, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, it means I don't define my relationships as either non-monogamous or monogamous. It's more each person, each connection, I define out of that what that connection wants to be. So if I meet someone and it feels like that connection is like, oh, this is someone I'd really want to dive into being monogamous and exploring this relationship container together, then then I have spaciousness for that. No part of that's going to feel like it's not being true to myself. And if I want meet somebody and I'm like the 9-hour distance relationship where I'm like, you know, I cannot imagine committing to monogamy with these dynamics here. Let's explore this non-monogamy. There's room for that too. And so it really leaves a lot of spaciousness to define it by the moment, by the individual connection and who I'm connecting with.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the things that just has come up in my mind as we've been talking is around, what you talked a little bit earlier about, like the not coming into relationships with a scarcity sort of
Yeah.
mindset, and sort of your early framing around non-monogamy feels like helped give some of that, where you had the community, you had the fluidity to go in and out of these, so it wasn't like, well, my boyfriend's an asshole or my partner's an asshole, but I have to stay with them because they're the right, all of the whole scarcity mindset stuff that we
Yeah.
often bring to relationships. But I love that it sounds like when you sort of moved away from this, we'll call it the strict non-monogamous world, you brought a lot of that spaciousness with you to didn't shift into this hard and fast scarcity place again. Like you brought, yeah, I mean, one of the things you said was I was really sort of good with myself, and that you had a lot of community and you had a lot going on around you. So it just, to me, it felt like that shift maybe was softened by the fact that you weren't moving into a place where like, okay, I've got to find the one, I got to lock it in, I got to make the next, jump on the relationship escalator path again.
Yeah. And that's one of the beautiful things that being so immersed in non-monogamy, I think, really informed my values and the way I do relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that. And I mean, I don't know that there was a great question in there, but it just like, I think this idea of not approaching relationships, I think even friendships, with that level of scarcity that, well, you're not giving me what a friend is supposed to give me. You're not giving me what a partner is supposed to give me.
Or like a black and white
Right.
narrative.
Versus, well, hey, this is what our friendship is. This is what our partnership is. And I'm okay with that because I can also go and have like a friend over here or a partner over here.
Yeah. And I think I hear this idea of, oh, non-monogamy is great because you don't have to get all your needs met by one person, thrown around as a reasoning to explore non-monogamy a lot. And I have mixed feelings about that one because it can feel a little reductionary. And like, what need are you going to meet for me? I remember going on a date once with this guy who was newer to exploring non-monogamy. And it was like our third date, and we were having a sleepover, and I like felt something shift somewhere in the course of the evening and wasn't quite sure what it was. And the next morning I felt him very in his head, and like, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? And he's like, well, I don't think I'm that attracted to you. And I'm like, okay. We were just intimate. That could have been something could have shared before, but all right.
Wow. Yeah.
And he's like, no, but it's okay because I'm exploring non-monogamy and I don't need to be really attracted to everybody. And I was like, well, that's still an important factor for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what need you're trying to fill here by still connecting with me, even if you're not attracted to me, but I'm not sure I'm interested in filling that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's this idea that there's a lot of ways to look at.
Yeah.
But I like the way you're framing it there, because I do think at its best, that's what it is. It's just like there's so many ways to fill our cup. And it's not like this human's meeting this need, and this human's meeting that need. But it's the lack of scarcity. It's the like, oh, I have so many different, rich, beautiful connections. And it really is nice to take that and have that carry, even if I'm in a like sexually monogamous relationship. And that's kind of the only monogamy I do is like sexually monogamous, because I'm still going to have deep, emotionally intimate relationships with other people. And it's still hard for me to get my head around when someone's monogamy doesn't leave a lot of room for deep friendships with other people of the other genders you're attracted to. And that one still doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the way you frame that.
Yeah.
The type of monogamy I'm willing to do is sort of sexual monogamy, right? Because it leaves that space to bring in the rest of yourself. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Another piece I think that I have noticed in making the transition that's different for other people's monogamy is I am still really good friends with almost all of my exes. There's a few there that wasn't healthy to continue that route, but for the most part, most of my ex-lovers and partners are still really good friends and people that will probably continue to be in my life for ever.
Yeah.
And those relationships are really important to me. And when someone's threatened by that, that's really confusing to me, because I'm like, if it was going to work out and if it was supposed to be a sexual relationship or a romantic relationship, it would still be that. And it's
Mhm.
not for a reason. But I learned through exploring that this connection is just like, oh, you're just friend family.
Yeah.
And it means a lot to me. And the love is always going to be there, even if it's not an in love romantic relationship.
Yeah.
And I've learned that that's really not true for many people's monogamy. And a lot of this learning was through being a therapist and getting to hear the intimate stories of how a lot of other people do relationship. And deeply respect those ways too, but realizing how different that is from my own.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It pops into my head. I made the reference earlier to the rom-coms and the Hallmark Channel. And I feel like one of the pieces that comes from those stories is often well, you're breaking up, screw that person, they can go to hell, never talk to them again, and they're terrible. Like you can't just transition a partnership and be like, hey, we had a great run. You're wanting things differently than me. Let's be friends. Like somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are more and more people doing it the other way. I think it's just not as talked about in our mainstream culture.
Yeah. And I think that's where I'm loving one of the things my business partner and I are always talking about is like making room for the nuance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much what informed a lot of why we created this tool, the non-monogamy card game, is to slow down and explore the nuance regardless of what relationship structure you want. And it's only in like really making space for that we can feel clear in our relationships. And a lot of what we got to is like, it doesn't matter whether you're monogamous or non-monogamous. You still want to be talking about all these different aspects.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's something often monogamy can learn from non-monogamy. Because I think so often when I meet like people that have been doing non-monogamy for a really long time, these are communication superstars. These are emotional intelligence rock stars who have really a lot of practice at having these conversations and holding space for that nuance and making a lot of room for a lot of different ways because you need to navigate a lot of different relationships. And I think that's something that I wish a lot of the monogamous people I work with could learn from. And it's often the work I do with people is like, okay, how do we make space? Like, let's not assume your idea of what cheating is might be very different than your idea of what cheating is. And when we're talking non-monogamy, people know, like, okay, what kind of relationship fidelity might we want? What might we not want? What makes this a container? What is okay with other partners, or just such normalized conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious what you touched on a little bit, but like really digging into like the motivation of this game of like sounds like it may have been in the works for a while and then finally like, decided to go for it and kind of I'm curious about that process.
Yeah. So the initial idea to create the game came from Kristen and I's practices as therapists. And I was practicing in the Bay Area at the time, and I was having people come in and such typical Bay Area clients. They're like, okay, we've read all the books and we want to open our relationship and we want to do it in the right way. And we know our attachment styles and we know this person's approach and that person's approach. And everyone says we need these relationship agreements. Where do we start? Do you have a list of questions? And Kristen and I created a shared Google Doc and started creating questions because we weren't finding. We scoured the internet. I reached out to all of my networks and no one was giving me a list in a way that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
So then we started creating the list of questions. And then really quick, we're like, this is boring and dry. Who wants to sit down with your partner and like work through this worksheet of a list of 150 questions? That
Yeah,
sounds
no one.
tedious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no one.
Yeah. And I'm
or
all
you
into
might
like,
start and do like 2 or 3 and then give up.
yeah. Yeah. I'm like, how can we create a way to engage like relationship conversations. Like, yes, they can get to hard places sometimes. Yes, they can bring up a lot, but you want them to feel connective and juicy and also fun. So there's like, okay, I might have some hesitancy here, but I'm also really looking forward to get diving into that there. And so at this time, like there's this ethos of conversation games that's been gaining popularity. I think so many people are hungry for deeper connection and how to get there. So we decided to gamify the idea and slowly kind of turned the questions into cards. I love the creative design process, and we got to work with an amazing graphic designer to help create the imagery, and then got to test it out in our communities and give it to friends. And I get a lot of feedback. Originally, the card game was just one deck. And so you might pull a card that's like, why are you non-monogamous or excited about exploring non-monogamy? And then it might jump to another question of, if kids are in the picture for us, how do we navigate communicating our non-monogamy to our kids? And when we had friends test it, they were like, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
So we decided to pull it apart so that it could be a little gentler on people's systems. And the first deck can really apply for anyone, even if you're monogamous and like just contemplating the idea, whether on your own is kind of self-reflection or with a partner, all the way to, we've been doing this for a while, but I want to connect to like more values and more just like, there's a lot of people, as you probably know, who like do non-monogamy and are kind of like, let's not talk about it and we'll deal with it when there's issues. And so I still think you can have been doing non-monogamy for a long time. And if that's the way you've been doing it, this still starting with that deck one's a safer way to ease into the conversations, to realize, oh, these can be connective and fun and sexy.
Yeah.
And then deck two, some more like heavier hitter conversations that tease apart the details of like, what do we need agreements about that maybe we haven't been considering? Let's talk about the nitty gritty. And in doing that, of course, there's going to be questions that don't apply to everyone. But you get to also be like, oh, I don't feel like this applies to me. And that gets to be just as useful sometimes and spawn whole other conversations.
Yeah. I love it. And I love the creativity that has gone into it. And
Thank you.
I'm curious, is it something that you work with your client? Like, do you use the game with your clients?
Yeah, I do. I utilize it in my practice with clients, but more than anything, as a therapist, when I would do relationship therapy, I'm always trying to get the people I work with to not need me anymore, is my goal.
Yeah.
So,
You're working to work yourself out of a job.
yeah, always the goal. So what I love doing is I introduce the game and I'll help people to navigate pulling a few cards if that feels scary and intimidating. But then I recommend people use it for relationship check-ins because I want them to create rituals of connection that don't rely on me being there. So I say, go out once a week, have a time that you kind of hold sacred to sit and pull a few cards together. We find most people don't get past 2 or 3 cards in a sitting because the conversations just spiral off in different directions. And that's great. You don't want to rush through them. The goal is not to go fast. And so pull a few cards. And then I tell people, if you get stuck, if you pull a card that brings up a conversation that's too hard for you to navigate on your own, then bring it back into me and we'll process that.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a beautiful way to like integrate that and encourage people to have the conversations, but give them a tool to help guide them and then bring them back. Yeah.
And then it creates such a healthy relationship habit of having regular check-in conversations. You can work all the way through the deck and then continue the ritual. And sometimes the answers to these things change, so you can just keep working through. Or you're like, okay, this was really nice to have this time. What else do we want to do with this? But still having that ritual of like, and how are we doing? What's coming up for you in this? That's so easy to brush off unless there's a big issue.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to do a hard turn here, but I'm curious. You know, you mentioned at the beginning of the episode that when you started in non-monogamy and like relationships, your family, your parents didn't really get it. And I'm curious, like updates on like your parents, like that understanding of non-monogamy, but also like being out in the world of being non-monogamous and kind of how you've navigated that.
Yeah. I think there is just we see non-monogamy so much more represented in the world now than when I first began. And I think that has helped. I'm so terrible remembering book titles. There was a book that was on the New York Times bestseller list that was more my mom's generation that I remember she saw all of a sudden her friends were reading and talking about. And I'd been creating the card game for a while now. And I remember when she saw that, she was like, "Oh, my friends are now talking about non-monogamy. Maybe there's something to this idea." And it was cool to feel the shift. I think something when it comes to us once and it's like, "Oh, this is new and shocking."
Yeah.
But once we start getting information from a lot of different sources and hearing a lot of different stories, it's like, "Oh, okay. Maybe that's not so radical."
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like it's come a long way since it.
Oh, yeah. I think public knowledge and opinions around non-monogamy has just opened up so much.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I was more, just kind of curious how
Yeah.
that's impacted your relational dynamics too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It was really sweet when I created the card game. I was talking to my dad about it, and my stepmom had passed away recently, and he's deep in his grief and his figuring out what his relationship looks like with her now that she's passed. And he was like, he's like, when I was younger, I thought about non-monogamy and I couldn't ever consider it because he's like, it's just too overwhelming for me to love multiple people. And he's like, but now for the first time, I realized that if I'm ever going to consider dating again, being in a relationship again, the person is not just going to be in relationship with me. They're also going to be in relationship with your stepmom from the other side because I am never going to lose my relationship with her. That's never going to quit being an important thing to me. He's like, do you think your card game will help with that?
Aw.
It was very tender.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have cards specifically yet that address questions of navigating non-monogamous relationships across the veil of life and death, but maybe that'll be something to work on in the future.
And also maybe some of those cards would open up conversations that could lead to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot that are just deep relational inquiry questions that are a lot less specific to how you in particular are doing relationship.
Yeah.
I love that you bring up this example with your dad because we've talked to a couple of people where they have had to navigate the loss of a partner, and and one of the things that we have talked a little bit about is in non-monogamy, one of the weird experiences that people have is supporting a partner through a breakup, right? Emma breaks up with somebody. Now I'm holding that sort of space to watch her grieve that relationship while we're still together. And you're like, well, how could you be sad? Like you still have me, I'm here. But taking that to like losing a partner in death is a whole different level. And I think even if you're not thinking non-monogamy, you get together with a widow or a widower, that relationship is still very present. That is going to be present in your partnership as you deepen it. And I hadn't ever really thought about that. Until you kind of brought it here. And even though we have had a few people on the show where they've talked about that they were, non-monogamous, lost a partner, and now they're like doing the grief process, how to create that space. So I don't again have necessarily a question about it, but it just sort of dawned on me as like a really powerful sort of tangential experience to non-monogamy that I think monogamous people go through.
Mm-hmm. And I don't have a lot of firsthand experience around this to speak to, but there's a place where I imagine so much of the spaciousness and this muscle that we learn to work when we're in non-monogamous relationships around what is it to honor another connection and someone's connection with somebody else, even when it's separate from my own. Like that's something we have to work. in non-monogamous relationships. And I imagine that similar spaciousness is really needed when you get together in a relationship with somebody who is still holding a deep place of honor and love for a past partner. And it's different, but yeah, there's something I imagine that you're onto there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I appreciate the opportunity to talk in depth about these things, and it's always fun to talk to therapists who love to analyze the relational aspects of these things. So I'm just grateful for being able to chat about this, Ayla.
Yeah.
There was another thing that just like kind of popped into my mind around sort of maybe like the theme of our whole conversation, and honestly, I feel like if you zoom way out of our work, is like the theme of our whole project here isn't like non-monogamy is better, or even really that non-monogamy and monogamy, in some ways I'm like, yes, they're different, but in many ways they're not. Like they're relationships. We're just figuring out how to be in relationships with other people. And I think that the conversation around, the one, or when we were talking a few minutes ago about different partners fulfill different needs, and sort of you saying like that's sort of a reductionist way to look at it. And I think for me, like thinking about that, not even in the scope of just like romantic and sexual partnership, but we do that with friends all the time, right? Like, this is my running friend, this is my basketball friend, this is my friend that I love to go to movies with, right? And they don't have
Yeah.
to be the same person, but that's not to mean you can't go running with your movie friend, or you can't go to a movie with your running friend, right? These things can overlap, they're fluid, and they're not even really for me at least, it's not that's all you are to me. It's just, it's to me, it's the freedom to say, well, hey, Emma's not really interested in going to a movie tonight. Could I reach out to somebody else and go to a movie, and not have to be like, okay, well, I guess I'll just wait until you're ready to go watch the movie, right? It's the freedom to still like live our lives without having to be, well, I'm only going to live my life with you when you are willing to live the life that I want to live.
Yeah. And I hear like it's a celebration of the different connections bring out different things in us
Yeah.
Right.
and different aspects of who we are.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful dynamic thing that is.
Yeah. Well, and I think, for me, one of the things that I love about it is, and it can be simultaneously really amazing and really hard to say, go out and discover new things without me.
Mhm.
And because I want you to bring those back to our partnership, right? I don't want to be the only one, exploring and learning new things. And I don't only want to do that together, but it is scary to say, yeah, go out and learn something brand new without me. Maybe even do it with somebody that you're attracted to. And then I'm going to trust that we're going to bring, in some aspect, pieces of that back to us. Maybe not that we ever do that activity together, but there's going to be energy coming back in. There's going to be new things that you're going to learn. Maybe it's a new way of cooking. Maybe it's a new way of doing something that we would have never discovered, the two of us, but we were able to discover it either with other people or in community with others that we wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah. Or just that it's going to make you a more alive, dynamic bring you to a more alive, dynamic place in yourself. And I'm going to enjoy being around you more because you're nourishing yourself in all these different ways.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I was thinking about, or there was something you said I really liked around like monogamy, non-monogamy. It doesn't really matter. We're just learning how to do relationship, and we're learning how to get better at relating. And I love that. I feel like that speaks to the essence of my ethos and why I like this ambiamorous piece of like all the trappings, the words, the labels that we can get so hung up in aren't what's really important. It's like, am I feeling authentically met in this moment, in this relationship? And how do I keep learning how to relate better, to bring more of me, to be able to connect with more of you? And so I
Yeah.
really love that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is it what I'm wanting to in relationship? Like getting
Mhm.
back to how, like that question you were asking, like, and asking the other person that too, or this is both what we're wanting. Can we create this and that? And checking in
Yeah.
about that, how that changes over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's just something else that just kind of popped into my head was you had made the comment earlier too about, well, the only type of monogamy I could really do would be like sexual monogamy. And what's interesting, just to me, it ties into this whole conversation of really relationship design and just co-creation is
Yeah.
we've also talked to people who are like, have all the sex you want with other people, no emotions, please, right? Don't
Mhm.
get feelings. So we also have talked to those people where the emotional monogamy is what they need, but not
Yeah.
sexual monogamy. And we could go spend the next 10 hours talking about, is that possible and all of that, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. It's still to me, it's the desire and that's where we're at, and saying, yeah, I'm good with the sex, but I'm not good with you falling in love with somebody. Versus
Yeah.
some people are like, oh, I'm totally good if you have all of these emotions and feelings, but just don't have sex with them. Like, and it's
How
just,
cool is it that we get to ask ourselves these questions and figure out what unique answer suits us at any given moment in
yeah.
time?
Yeah. Right?
And to keep revisiting it, I think that's one of the beautiful things about the game you said, right? If you play it today and you play it in 2 years, your answers are probably not going to be the same to
Yeah.
some of the questions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was thinking about this kind of like full circle element. And so when we did the photo shoot for the card game launch, I invited a bunch of the people that were in the photo shoot were partners of mine from that era in my early 20s when I was first exploring non-monogamy. And there was a moment I was standing out on the balcony of the house we were using for the photo shoot, and I was like, "Look, you guys, this game wouldn't exist without you. If we hadn't done so much so wrong, I wouldn't have known to ask these questions." And that part was said in jest, there's some truth to it, but said in jest, but also had me appreciating the beauty of the evolution of relationships, of these two men I was standing with who still there's so much love, and still they would take an entire day to show up and do this thing with me just out of a desire to support what I was up to, and just the evolution of the friendship over 15 years.
Yeah.
And it was no longer relationship, but I was like, but the relating still was really there.
Yeah.
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 I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. The relating can still be there even if the romantic or sexual connection or relationship is no longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have this funny image in my head of of past partners and connections looking through and being like, I bet that card's in there because of me. That one's
No
mine.
one's come to me yet with, like, those direct questions, we'll see.
So I feel like this one has a little bit of my essence wrapped into it.
Probably.
Yep.
Is there anything else today that you wanted to share?
We've covered such a beautiful breadth, I don't know. It's just been such a joy, the whole process of creating this game. First of all, just the process of doing this with someone I've been friends with for nearly 15 years, we've known each other through different kinds of relating, and then getting to create this tool that we get to use with our clients, but also that then we get to see out in the world and hear people's stories and feedback and get to see how it's touching other people's relationships and the conversations that it gets to spawn, like sitting here talking to the two of you. And I'm just so enjoying and loving the aliveness of that
Mhm.
kind of web of relating.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing everything you did today and for creating the game. For anyone listening, again, links will be in the show notes to the game and your work and all of that.
Yeah. So people can reach out if they want to work with you and get a copy of the game.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It really has been a joy talking to you too.
Likewise. Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day. And we're back. Thank you so much, Ayala, for coming on and sharing your story and for all of the amazing work that you do. A quick reminder to anyone listening, you can go over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, click on the podcast tab, and there you can find the podcast show notes and links to all of Ayala's work, including the non-monogamy card game.
Yes, definitely go check it out. We have a copy of the game. It's beautifully designed, super fun to play. And we've been enjoying it ourselves. So check it out, grab a copy. And thank you to Ayala from my side as well. A quick reminder, we have some stuff have coming up. Some of those important dates we wanted to tell you about. First of all is September 10th. We have our next virtual workshop for our community. So you can learn more about that and to join our community over under the community tab. And we also have an in-person retreat for our community members coming up on October 3rd to the 5th. That is out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We would love to have you join us. You can find out more again under the community tab. We'd love to have you join us. I keep saying it because it's true.
Come join us.
Come join us.
And next week, we have another interview for you. It is going to be with Carrie and Drew. We're excited about this one, as always. So come back and listen in a week.
We'll see you then.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.